Gu Shijio shook her head. I'm not sure how to classify myself either because I could not feel my body at the initial stages. Perhaps the credit temple you built for me worked. I slowly gained my 5 senses and eventually I could feel my body and even move my limbs. In fact, I was very happy. I thought I could stand in front of you one day in the future if I continue to improve so that I can get answers from you. I followed you around, and I was very sad when I saw that you were depressed. However, I felt you deserved it because you hurt me so badly. I even thought it was quite nice to be able to see you so often. Unfortunately, you could not see me. Thus, you would not even know even if I was lying in your arms. I practiced and thought that I would be reborn again if things continue to improve. I thought it would take around 80 to 100 years. Gu Zijia's voice sounded hoarse. At that time, I thought we would still have plenty of time. Anyhow, I would be willing to stand by your side even as a ghost. However, to my surprise, I was trapped in the temple and could not find a way out. Gu Shijio pointed in the direction of a celestial master Gu temple. I remember we went to the temple together that day. However, I was distracted for a moment, and when I looked back, you were already gone with my body, and I was left behind. The firmament stone was alarmed by what it heard. Master, I remember this. We could not sense your existence since that day. The Lord was very depressed, and he used many spells to trace you. He even designed some light features to lure you. In fact, he almost lost his mind as he made a table full of dishes every day and he even thought it was you whenever the wind blew. I'm sorry, we did not know that you were left behind and trapped in there. Why did you not look for us? The Lord had stayed in the town for the entire day that day. Gu Shijio glared at it. Do you think that I did not want to find you? I was trapped. What happened? Who trapped you here? Di Fui looked furious. Gu Shijio shook her head. No idea. There was an extra wizardry barrier in the temple that was specially made to trap me here because other pilgrims could go in and out freely but I could not. I could not get more than 3 miles away from the temple, and there was a voice that was continuously speaking to me from right beside my ear. Gu Shijio then explained her situation when she was trapped. Di Fui glimpsed at the firmament stone when Gu Shijio mentioned about the guardian of the heavenly order. The firmament stone immediately shrunk its body. It was not me. Icily, Di Fui said, I know, you're not capable enough. The firmament stone was speechless. Gu Shijio slightly pursed her lips as she glimpsed at Di Fui. I knew from the guardian of the heavenly order that I was set to be the new lord who would replace you. She continued with a trembling voice. I really did not expect that only one of us could survive. Do you know what was my first reaction when I knew it? I did not want to be reborn again. I don't want to replace you. I'd rather everything remained the same. Di Fui's heart was in pain. He certainly understood how difficult it was to learn of such information. Shijio, my departure can never be changed, regardless of whether or not you are reborn. Gu Shijio nodded. Yeah, that voice told me the same thing. It told me I would only be reborn after 38 years later and you will die after 4 months. Chapter 1772. Gu Shijio leaned against a tree. Di Fui, you do know that I almost collapsed when I learned of that information, right? One of Di Fui's hands pressed on her shoulder. Gu Shijio was firm even though her face was still pale. He could see that she was scared and vulnerable at this time. He sighed. Shijio, I understand. Gu Shijio shook her head and fixed her eyes on him. No, you don't know how I feel. Di Fui, I know you are doing this for me because you don't want me to be sad after you die. Hence, you're willing to betray me and make me hate you. However, you still do know me. I almost went crazy. The only thing in my head was to see you. I must see you. I really could not imagine what would happen if I did not see you before you left. Involuntarily, her voice turned sharper and louder. Thinking about that crazy moment, she would probably go insane if she could not manage to see him in time. She even planned to join the devil instead of the heavenly order if she could not see him when she escaped. She did not only threaten that voice once, she told that voice she would definitely join the devil if she could not see him before he dies. Perhaps her craziness terrified the master of that voice, and the heavenly order grew worried that she would become a crazy lord. Hence, the voice quickly taught her the fastest way to condense her body. Since I learned the strategy, I tried my best to cultivate it. I didn't sleep. She teared. It was extremely suffering, just like breaking all of my bones and then reassembling them again every single day. It was as though I was dancing on a blade every second and I felt like dying from the pain. However, I did not give up. The pain was nothing serious compared to the desire of seeing you again. I motivated myself every day. I calculated the days that I needed to get back to you. I felt that time was flying by too quickly even though I suffered so much every day. I was so worried that I'd miss the chance to see you again. Every morning when the sun rose, I did not want it to go down because I knew that you would have one day less to live and I'll have one day less to see you. Gu Shijio involuntarily choked while speaking. Di Fui, I'm terrified. I cannot imagine a life where I cannot see you again. I was so unlucky that I bumped into Long Moyen and got tricked by him right after I successfully got my body. He even wanted to trap me for 3 months, just because he did not want me to see you. Di Fui, I'm exhausted. I haven't slept for a month. I couldn't let him trap me there because all my efforts would be in vain. Therefore, I struck the wizardry barrier with all my energy even though I was already exhausted. Di Fui was noticeably uncomfortable. Shijio. His blood was boiling in his body. This girl gave her all for him. Finally, he lifted his arms and pulled her into his embrace. He hugged her tightly and never wanted to let go anymore. Finally, Gu Shijio returned to this embrace. All the depression gushed up to her eyes, and she finally collapsed. She cried while she pushed him several times. I've put so much effort to escape, but what did you tell me just now? You don't want me anymore. You just want to teach me your kung fu. Di Fui, if this is what you want, why the H*li did I put so much effort to come out? Anyway, there will be someone who could teach me after a few decades. She lived in pain and fear every day when she was trapped in the wizardry barrier. She would have collapsed and given up a long time ago if she did not have such a determined mind. Although she had finally overcome the obstacles, all her depression, guilt, and fear were waiting for its comforter. She needed a warm embrace right now. However, you can bet that she would be very picky about who gives it to her. The one who comforted Gu Shijio must be Di Fui. She did not want anyone else. She could be a tough woman in front of everyone. However, she was just like a little girl who was crying and throwing her tantrum in front of him because she had been treated unfairly. Since he did not want to hug her, then she did not need his hug anymore. Therefore, she pushed him away. Di Fui, you don't want me anymore. Don't touch me. I don't want your embrace. She applied quite a strong force, but she still could not push Di Fui away. The harder she pushed, the tighter he hugged. Her tears were like burnt charcoal, leaving numerous marks on his heart until he sensed a squeezy feeling in his chest. He hugged her tightly, to the extent that he could not wait for their bodies to become one again. Shijio. He called her name with a hoarse voice. He lowered his head and kissed the tears on her face. I'm so sorry, Shijio. I never intended to abandon you. You're the only one I want. No, you just said you didn't want me. You wanted to draw a line between us. You didn't even want me to be your disciple. She gasped as she cried. I'm sorry, Shijio. I'm sorry. He hugged her tightly and patted her back to comfort her. At this moment, he was no longer the Almighty Lord, and she was not the cold and scary new Lord either. He hugged her in his embrace and kissed her cheek, her eyes, her nose tip. Gu Shijio buried her head in his arms as she cried. It was as if she was letting out all the depression from the unfair treatment she had since they first broke up. The firmament stone was completely stunned as it watched the scene. In its eyes, Gu Shijio was always a calm and intelligent girl, and she would always overcome any obstacle she faced. She had a toughness to her which no other lady would have at this age. The firmament stone was shocked and did not dare to blink anymore because that was the first time it witnessed her losing her control and crying like that. It took a glimpse at the Lord and realized he was tearing. Although he did not cry, his voice was hoarse when he tried to comfort her. The Lord was obsessed with cleanliness. However, he did not feel disgusted even though her face was covered with tears, and he even kissed away her tears. At that moment, they were so close to each other to the point that there was not even a tiny space to fit a needle. The firmament stone suddenly realized its existence was annoying them at this moment. Thus, it quietly coiled around Gu Zijia's wrist and pretended it was a dead rock to hide. The firmament stone had a pair of sharp eyes. It could sense that one of Gu Zijia's hands was actually pulling Di Fuya's clothes, although she was pushing him away. Women, oh women. No wonder there was a saying that women are dishonest. Ironically, it seemed to be the truth. The firmament stone felt lament. It looked around and realized they were on a quiet hill. People hardly came here as it was very far away from the town. At the moment, no one else was there to watch them. The firmament stone heaved a sigh of relief. Yet, right before its eyes was the current lord and the future lord. Their mighty image would be completely ruined if someone ran into this scene. Luckily, no one was there. The sky turned dark, and there were a few stars that hung above the sky. After watching them for a while, the firmament stone felt that it was not that romantic to cuddle in the dark. It began to ponder and felt it was time for it to perform. It owed its master for failing to sense her presence before. Wanting to impress Gu Shijio, the firmament stone flew into the air and shone above the two of them like a bright star. It was glowing in 7 colors, and it looked very similar to a disco ball on the dance floor. It was giving its best to shine. However, a sleeve rubbed over it, and the place went dark again as though there was a short circuit. Suddenly, it fell and crashed on a rock at the corner. It made a very loud sound when it crashed, just like an egg falling on the floor. However, the two of them were hugging each other passionately and did not even intend to check on it. Its master did not look at it at all. The firmament stone was very angry. It knew who the culprit was. Di Fui. It was his sleeve. The firmament stone shone again and was ready to fly up again. Suddenly, it received a blow again and fell onto the ground. After settling the big light bulb, Di Fui lowered his head and dropped a kiss on her cheek. This was followed by numerous strong and passionate kisses. As he kissed her, a familiar fragrance made her heart race again. Since their breakup half a year ago, he did not even kiss her once, even though he did hug her before. As they kissed each other, all the depression gushed out, and tears rolled down her cheek again. Gu Shijio was unfamiliar with this feeling. She felt weak and vulnerable, and she never expected that she would cry like a little girl in front of him one day. "Shijio, it's all my fault," Di Fui said with a hoarse voice as he whispered beside her lips. Her tears rolled onto their cuddling tongues. It was a little salty and bitter. Gu Shijio tasted her tears and felt embarrassed. She lifted her head slightly to avoid his lips. She gently pushed him away so that she could apply a cleaning spell on herself. She did not want to kiss him with tears all over her face. That was embarrassing. However, she was really exhausted and felt tired halfway through the spell. Di Fui held her little hand as he looked into her eyes. Her eyes were swollen, and her pupils looked like 2 shining black gems. In fact, she was quite embarrassed at that moment. She just broke the wizardry barrier with sweaty clothes and then cried until her nose was red. However, that was the genuine side of her. So, Di Fui was touched. He kissed on her eyes. "It's all right, this is just fine." She struggled in his embrace. No. She did not want to stay in his embrace with a dirty face. Girls were always proud of their appearance. She needed to take care of her image in front of him. She did not want to show him her dirty face. She would have a phobia. Di Fui cast a spell for her, and she was finally clean now. However, her eyes were still swollen, and her red nose might need something a little extra. Gu Shijio touched her hair and realized it was messy. Her image was completely gone. She wanted to see him in her best appearance. Therefore, she could not be bothered to stay in his embrace anymore. She quickly pushed him away and tried to fix her hair. She stretched her hands into her storage space to get a comb. However, it was only then that she realized she did not bring anything since her body was newly formed. Chapter 1775. Most of Gu Zijia's belongings were in her storage bag that was attached to her original body. In fact, there were some items in the firmament stone storage space, but all of them were valuable items and medicines rather than daily necessity. Without being asked, Di Fui suddenly got a comb in his palm out of nowhere. Is this what you need? Gu Shijio took a glimpse and realized it was the comb he made for her when they were living in the Forbidden Land after they got married. She had been using it for 8 years. He got the comb well polished until it became shiny. However, when they broke up, she returned everything he gave to him, including the comb. Gu Shijio was surprised that he had it with him. In fact, she liked the comb very much. Thus, she wanted to take it. However, Di Fui let her sit on a futon instead. Here, let me fix it for you. Gu Shijio patiently waited. Her new body was probably better than her old one because both her skin and hair were extremely beautiful. Her skin was fair and moist, while her hair was as smooth as silk. Although it was rather messy now, it was still very smooth and shiny. Di Fui had helped her to comb her hair before, hence, he was quite familiar with it. When the comb rubbed on her scalp, it was like massaging her head. Suddenly, Gu Shijio thought of a saying, when the first brush reaches the tip, the newlywed couple will respect each other. When the second brush reaches the tip, the newlywed couple would love each other until they are old. Her chest felt tight all of a sudden. She knew that they would never experience that and they could never grow old together. Gu Shijio felt like crying at the thought of it, but she remained calm and kept it in. She wanted to spend his last 3 months with him wisely. So, she decided to put everything else aside. Certainly, she still needed a solution to make him stay. Since she has made so many miracles, perhaps this would also come to fruition. She could not lose him. In fact, she was extremely exhausted because she had not been resting for a month. With Di Fui now in her sights, her worries had now faded. Therefore, she began to feel sleepy. When Di Fui was combing her hair, she felt that her eyelids were very heavy. Di Fui made a nice hairstyle for her. He got a mirror and placed it in front of her. Baby, look, is it nice? Gu Shijio did not answer, but her body slumped to one side. Di Fui was shocked and quickly held her. He took a look and realized her eyes were closed. Luckily, she was just asleep. Her eyelashes were still wet, and a shadow was formed below her eyes. There were 2 light circles above her cheek. Apparently, she was exhausted. He was relieved that she could finally get some rest. Thus, he bent to carry her. Her hand immediately held his top, and she buried her head into his embrace. She used to wrap her arms around his waist every time he carried her, even when she was asleep. There were some habits which were really difficult to get rid of. But the half a year apart did force her to change. And to his dismay, she no longer hugged his waist this time. She left one of her hands hanging beside her body when he carried her. It looked quite pitiful for her to be carried that way. Shijio. Depressingly, Di Fui felt something was stuck in his throat as he looked at her. He lowered his head and kissed her lips gently. Her lips smelled as good as usual. That was something he missed all the while, and a slight contact was enough to make his heart race. Shijio, what should I do to minimize the pain you would go through? His fingers lied on her wrist to check her pulse. A moment later, he frowned. Gu Shijio fell asleep and had a nightmare. She dreamt of herself suddenly falling from the sky. In her dream, she saw people who had already passed away such as Long Fan, Mo Zhao, Rong Jialua, Rong Che, Rong Yan. She even dreamt about Gu Tianqing and Gu Tianchao. All of them either glared at her or tried to kill her. Some even exploded in front of her, and their blood splattered everywhere. They then gathered together again and continuously screamed at her, "Return my life." Gu Shijio was terrified. In her dream, Mo Zhao was extremely annoying because he could not stop changing his appearance between Rong Che and himself. Gu Shijio had walked a short journey with Rong Che in her dream. Rong Che sighed. "Shijio, I've never intended to hurt you, but you just couldn't let me go." In her dream, Rong Che looked very much like the person she had met years ago when she first saw him. He had a paper fan in his hand just like all those young, handsome masters. However, Gu Shijio suddenly recalled that he was actually Mo Zhao. She quickly took a step back while Rong Che morphed into Mo Zhao. Mo Zhao had an injured appearance with blood stains all over his body. He laughed aloud as he spoke, "Shijio, you'll regret. No one can change the heavenly laws, including you." There was no hatred in his gaze but sympathy. "You'll regret." She then saw Long Fan wearing modern clothes. He was wearing a white robe and behind him was a huge science lab. Inside the lab, there were many crystal coffins filled with a type of solution, and each was occupied by a human. Sweat broke out from Gu Zijia's skin when she finally saw the humans inside the crystal coffin. Those were all clones of her. She could not even count how many there were. She immediately leaped 2 steps backward. Long Fan turned around and smiled at her. "Shijio, I'm waiting for your return. You're mine." Gu Shijio was extremely angry, hence, she launched an attack. "I'm not yours. Long Fan, you're insane." All the crystal coffins cracked, and the clone bodies opened their eyes and sat up. In a blink of an eye, the clone bodies had approached her, and they were all wearing the same clothes as her. Smilingly they said, "We're all Gu Shijio. Well, replace you." Without waiting for another second, she took out her sword and sliced the clone bodies as if she was chopping vegetables. Blood spilled all over the place. Those girls did not seem to die in peace though. They still whispered beside Gu Zijia's ears. "Gu Shijio, killing us is equivalent to killing yourself. You'll regret." The wind suddenly blew harshly in the area. Long Fan and his science lab disappeared while Gu Shijio realized she was in a miserable desert now and she was going to be cooked under the hot sun. She felt extremely uncomfortable and thirsty due to the scorching heat, and she tried her best to look for water. She saw an oasis further ahead, and she quickly ran over happily. Gu Shijio saw Di Fui in the oasis. He was sitting beside a geyser as he waved at her while she was running toward him. She finally heaved a sigh of relief. "Here, drink it," he said as he delivered some water to her. He sighed as he watched her finish drinking the water. "Shijio, it's almost time for me to go. Could you please forget about me? This would be best for you." Suddenly, her head went blank as if someone had struck her really hard. She quickly tugged his sleeve. "I thought you have 3 more months? Why are you leaving all of a sudden?" He remained silent as he glimpsed at her gently. She refused to let go of his sleeve. "Di Fui, this is not funny at all." He ran his fingers through her hair and sighed. "Shijio, we are disobeying the heavenly laws and karma is about to come. Hence, I've lost the 3 months of my lifespan as well? Impossible." Gu Zijia's voice sounded hoarse. "You still need to teach me all your skills. How could you die? You haven't taught me anything, Shijio. Someone from heaven will come and teach you. Take good care of yourself. My only regret is not being able to take care of you for the rest of your life." His voice was getting softer as a 7-colored ray began to engulf his body, while she watched him slowly fade away in front of her own eyes. "No!" She screamed and rushed forward. She wanted to hug him. However, he faded and finally disappeared from her embrace. She tried her best to make him stay, but she failed. "Di Fui!" She screamed aloud with a lot of sweat covered on her forehead. Gu Shijio sat on the bed and idled for a short while. She was sitting on her own bed in the National Celestial Master's Mansion. All the furniture remained the same, and even the Yulon flower in the vase was still fresh as though she had never left. It was a sunny day and the sunlight shone into her room. The clock in her room looked shiny under the sunlight. Luo Zhanyu was anxiously looking at her from the opposite direction. "Shijio, are you all right?" Gu Shijio was still unable to absorb everything that just happened. Her heart was racing, and she was still a little slow-witted as she looked at Luo Zhanyu. "Shijio? Shijio?" Luo Zhanyu waved at her. Gu Shijio finally shifted her gaze to him. "But why you here?" Luo Zhanyu sighed. "Shijio, you've been sleeping for more than 24 hours. I'm so worried." She paused upon hearing what he said. Was that a dream? Was it a nightmare? She calmed herself and looked around, only to find that she was in her own bedroom. How did she return home? She could not recollect how much of her past was now a dream. She was a little confused and seemed to have recalled something. "Where's Di Fui?" she asked Luo Zhanyu as she held his hand. Luo Zhanyu rubbed his brows. "Shijio, where have you been these days? You've gone missing for a month. Many people said you were with the Lord. However, I have never seen you. I wanted to find you, but the Lord was always in a hurry and always left before I arrived. He has been building credit temples for you. There were rumors saying the Lord intends to appoint you as his successor. Shijio, I'm confused. Di Fui came yesterday when he sent you home. He said you were exhausted and you would probably sleep for 2 days and 1 night. After that he just left. Wei said he would be back soon. Also, he instructed the 4 messengers to stay here with you. Luo Zhanyu was a bit naggy today and went on and on about what had happened. Fortunately, Gu Shijio managed to extract a few key points from the big bunch of information. Firstly, both she and Mo Zhao died at the same time, but she managed to be reborn. Besides that, Di Fui built many credit temples for her, and those were real. It was not just a dream. Therefore, it was real that Di Fui still had 3 months to live. She jumped out of bed upon that realization. Did he tell you where he went? Luo Zhanyu shook his head. No, he didn't. He is always unpredictable, as you know. Shijio, what happened between you and him? I thought you had cancelled the engagement? What is going on? Gu Shijio took a deep breath. We had some misunderstandings before, but it has been resolved now, so both of you will get married? Luo Zhanyu quickly asked. Definitely. Gu Shijio answered right away. She wanted to marry him regardless of the time he had left. She would not let him create any excuses this time. Luo Zhanyu was shocked by her tone because she sounded like she was going to threaten Di Fui to marry her. Gu Shijio was going crazy. Although Luo Zhanyu told her that Di Fui went out for an urgent errand and that he would be back soon, she still felt insecure because she had not seen him. She was even more worried when she recalled the elements of the dream. She was really scared that Di Fui would just hide somewhere until he dies. She found the 4 messengers and realized that they had all lost so much weight in just over a month. Mu Feng heaved a sigh of relief when he saw her. The very first thing he said was, Shijio, I'm glad that you are alive. Do you know how sad our Lord was when you were away? God knows how happy and excited they were when they knew Gu Shijio had returned. Initially, all of them were executing their daily tasks as usual. Suddenly, they received an order from the Lord to rush to her mansion. In fact, they had no idea what happened, but they tried their best to rush over. All of them were stunned when they saw Gu Shijio sleeping on the bed. The Lord did not explain further but told them to guard her with their lives and that they should not leave her alone. He told them he had an urgent matter and he would return after 2 days. Then he left right away. Therefore, 4 of them were left behind to safeguard Gu Shijio, who was sleeping soundly. Since all of them were men, it was certainly inconvenient for them to stay in her bedroom. Hence, they were standing separately at 4 different locations outside the bedroom. As the 4 of them were there in unison, even a mosquito could not fly in. Forget about an assassin. Gu Shijio was still upset. They already had so little time to spend together, hence, they could not afford to waste a single second. What was so important that he had to do? She was anxious all day since she had the nightmare. She had slept for a day and a night, but Di Fui said he would only return after 2 days. Hence, she still needed to wait for another day. The only thing she knew for certain was that she would not be able to continue sleeping. Suddenly, she realized she did not know what to do while waiting for his return. In fact, there were plenty of things for her to do. However, she could not focus because she was anxious. Finally, the day had passed. However, Di Fui had not returned. Gu Shijio began to feel anxious and panicked. That was the first time she felt so worried in her life. Her heart was racing all day and she could barely focus or do anything about it. It was frustrating to be in that position. Luckily, Luo Zhanyu reminded her, Shijio, do you want to pay your respects to His Majesty at the Royal Mausoleum? Gu Shijio was shocked. His Majesty? Luo Zhanyu looked a little depressed. Yeah, our emperor has passed away. His coffin has been transported back to be buried. Do you want to go since both of you were once very close friends? Gu Shijio immediately stood up. Yes, let's go. It was frequently raining during the festival of Qingming. Countless people were walking on the street as if they were going to leave this world out of sheer sadness. It was drizzling as the Qingming festival was just around the corner. Gu Shijio was idling as she fixed her eyes at the tombstone in front of the royal mausoleum. Rong Jialua had a relatively high spiritual power. Perhaps he did not expect himself to have such a short lifespan because he did not build a mausoleum for himself in advance. Therefore, this one was built in a hurry. Rong Jialua was once her good friend who treated her genuinely. She did not expect him to have this kind of ending. He not only lost his physical body but his souls were all destroyed as well. He could never be reborn, and what was buried inside was just an unconscious shell. Gu Shijio was extremely depressed as she stood in front of the tombstone. Although it was drizzling, she did not use an umbrella or initiate any spells. She just let the rain fall on her hair and clothes. She was wondering whether Di Fui would have a tombstone 3 months later. Instantly, she felt as if her heart was being squeezed by someone. It was so painful to the extent that she did not dare to think about it anymore. There must be a way. There must. She would find it. No matter what it took. She could not imagine what she would do after Di Fui immortalizes. It would be like the end of the world to her. Suddenly, she realized why Di Fui had to push her away earlier. It would be impossible for her to accept this outcome. Perhaps she could one day accept his betrayal. However, she could never accept him being gone forever. 3 more months to go. What if she could not find the solution? Was she going to watch him immortalize? She lifted her head and looked at the dark clouds. There was not even a beam of sunlight today. It was already 2 days and a night, but Di Fui had yet to return. Would he just disappear forever like what she experienced in the nightmare? No way. She would not let this happen. She immediately jumped up. She could not continue waiting like this. She must find him. She turned around and was ready to go out. Suddenly, there was a shade above her head. A green umbrella covered her head and the rain no longer fell on her hair. Why you didn't bring an umbrella? Are you planning to experience being soaked in the rain? She heard a familiar voice. She paused, turned around, and fixed her eyes at a smiling gaze. He was wearing a purple robe, but he did not wear a mask today. His eyes were as charming as usual, and she was always captivated by those charming eyes. The umbrella was a good complement to the scenery behind him, and the combination made a beautiful scene. Although he looked pale, he looked energetic when he tried to flirt with her. Why are you looking at me this way? Have you turned stupid after soaking in the rain? He applied a cleaning spell on her while he talked to her. Gu Shijio finally felt an overwhelming sense of relief. She even shed a tear in the process. She glared at him and remained silent as she pursed her lips. Di Fui was shocked. What happened? Why do you look like you're going to cry? He glanced around, and his gaze stopped at Rong Jialuo's tombstone. He seemed to understand what was going on and sighed. Shijio, you're sad for Rong Jialuo? In fact, before he could finish talking, Gu Shijio pulled his sleeve and walked away. Follow me. Without hesitation, Di Fui followed her. The two of them arrived at a pavilion. It was built on the hill and surrounded by a plum forest. It was the plum flower season. Hence, the scene looked spectacular. Since it was drizzling and they were in the forest, no one would come to this place, and that made it a good place for a private date. The rain was gentle while the red petals on the ground occasionally flew up into the pavilion and onto their clothes. Originally, there was a stone table and bench in the pavilion. However, Di Fui has thrown it away because he felt it had worn out. He took a soft chair out from his storage space for Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio did not talk much, but she was idling as she looked at the plum forest outside the pavilion. Di Fui took a look at her complexion and realized she looked much better since she had a good sleep. However, there were some tiny capillaries at the bottom of her eyeballs. Apparently, she did have a good rest in the last 2 days. He first checked on her pulse and then wanted to check her heartbeat. However, Gu Shijio suddenly grabbed his hand. Di Fui looked at her and realized she was staring at him with her eyes widely opened. Di Fui, when are you marrying me? Asked Gu Shijio. Di Fui was shocked. Before he could say anything, Gu Shijio asked again, seems like you still not willing to marry me, right? Di Fui ran out of words. Shijio, I know what you want to say. Gu Shijio interrupted him. You want to say that you only have 3 months left to live and you don't want to tie me up so that I wouldn't be a widow after 3 months because you don't want to ruin my life. Am I right? Is this what you want to say? So, even after you know that I already know everything, you still want to avoid this, and that's what you mean by protecting me. Di Fui remained silent. Gu Shijio was getting angrier as she talked, hence, she pulled Di Fui to the chair. She drew very close to him and fixed her gaze right in front of his eyes. Do you think what I said is right? Both of them were extremely close now, they could even smell each other's breaths now. Di Fui was excited, but he tried to control his desires. He sighed. Shijio, when he was about to explain, Gu Shijio suddenly pushed him down without any notice. She positioned herself on his body right as he slumped onto the chair. Di Fui was alarmed. Although that was what he wanted all the while, something was wrong with her. Her face blushed as she lied on his body and her eyes looked like it was burning as the plum forest was reflected in her pupils. Di Fui did not think too much but held one of her wrists to check her pulse. Shijio, you're heaty recently, this is the side effect of condensing into an immortal body. Before he finished talking, his top had been torn. Di Fui was shocked and quickly held her wrist. Shijio. Although she normally looked boyish and tough, she was quite shy in this area. Even though they had sex multiple times in their 8 years of marriage, he was always the director. Sometimes, he would seduce her to take the lead when he wanted something special. However, she was still shy and could not fully deliver it to him. Her face would normally turn into a tomato halfway while they had sex. This was the very first time Di Fui was pushed down by her. His entire top had been ripped off, which exposed his fair skin. It looked a little shiny under the moonlight and was extremely seductive. Gu Shijio looked at him and realized his palm was burning as he grabbed her wrist. He fixed his gaze at her as he lied on the chair and his eyes were extremely charming as the moon was reflected in his pupils. This man was too handsome and he was also extremely strong. However, he was dying soon. This thought instantly made Gu Shijio feel suffocated. Her eyes began to turn red, however, she smiled, and her fingers slowly drew circles on his chest. Di Fui, did you refuse to put me back to my original body because you wanted me to keep my virginity after you immortalize? So that I can fall in love with someone else and spend the rest of my life with him? Di Fui remained silent. That was indeed his original objective. Gu Shijio narrowed her eyes with a light smile as she glimpsed at him. I got it right. However, does it not hurt you when you picture me having sex with someone else? Would you not feel jealous? Di Fui felt a slight discomfort in his chest. How could he not feel jealous? Although he planned to keep her virginity, he did not dare to imagine her falling in love with someone else. It would be too much for him to accept. She belonged with him. However, he did not want her to be alone forever just because of him. Therefore, he decided to remove all the memories she had about him and let her keep her virginity. Then, she could fall in love with someone else in the future without feeling guilty. Shijio. He held her hand. Her hand was smooth and delicate. Everything about her was perfect to him. But how long more could he hold this hand? How long more he could keep her in his embrace? The pain slowly gushed toward his heart, and he finally wrapped his arms tightly around her waist. Finally, both of them cuddled tightly. Gu Shijio was in tears, but this time with a smile. Have you heard about this saying? Once one has seen the best, the rest is not worth looking at. I've met you and fell in love with you. Who else I can fall in love with in the future? Her fingertips were still drawing circles on his chest as she said with a hoarse voice, Di Fui, I wouldn't simply fall in love with someone. Similarly, I wouldn't simply marry anyone. Thus, even after you immortalize, I wouldn't fall in love with someone else. You can abandon me now or refuse to marry me now. You can even ignore me, neglect me, or even dump me. You can let this 3 months slide. I'll just take it as a lesson for overestimating myself. I'll just live with all these regrets and depression for the rest of my life. I won't force you." As she finished, she let go of him and left him. She even helped him to tidy up his clothes and covered the parts of his skin which were exposed. Di Fui remained silent as he watched her leave. Gu Shijio did not expect that he would be dumbfounded after that performance. She was extremely disappointed and sad. When she was leaning against his body, she could feel that he was excited because she could sense a little change in his physical body. Apparently, he was very good at controlling himself. Perhaps he would never change his mind in terms of protecting her virginity. Therefore, she could only live with it. She paused after taking 2 steps forward. Without turning her head back, she casually said, "You don't have to avoid me, it's tiring for both of us. Since I said I wouldn't force you, then I'll keep my promise." She paused and did not feel like continuing to talk. In the next second, she was ready to teleport away. Suddenly, her wrist was grabbed by a hot palm. Without waiting for her to respond, she was pulled by a strong force and crashed into an embrace. Her heart began to race. As she lifted her head, her lips rubbed against his chin. Her lips were soft and fragrant while his chin was firm. At the moment, they both smelled a familiar scent. One of his arms was tightly locked on her waist. He sighed as he looked into her eyes. "Shijio, you've misunderstood me." Gu Shijio glimpsed at him with a frown. "Misunderstood?" He let her take a seat. "Let me ask you, do you often have bad dreams these days? Do you always feel anxious to the point where you sometimes cannot control your limbs?" He listed a few symptoms. Gu Shijio was speechless. He was completely right. But was that not to be expected? Anyhow, she just got her physical body. Coupled with the information that she finally learned, it was reasonable to feel anxious. A blue bottle with some solution inside appeared on Di Fui's palm. "Shijio, this is not a common illness. It's because of anxiety and impatience. Although you managed to get your new body, there are venomous residues inside your body. If these venoms cannot be removed in time, all the symptoms would be worsened. Hence, you will be bothered by the nightmares every day. You will then get more furious and lose your mind with all these challenges. This would result in you losing control." Di Fui continued, "I've checked your pulse the day before yesterday, so I know this illness. I didn't avoid you. I needed to go for 2 days because I wanted to collect some herbs for you. However, the herbs are grown at a special location, and it requires a special liquid to make the pills. Therefore, it took 2 days to make it, including the journey back and forth. I thought I would be able to return before you woke up, but I really didn't expect you to wake up 1 day earlier. I also did not expect you to think that I was trying to avoid you." He quickly explained everything so that Gu Shijio understood. She now felt embarrassed for her earlier actions. "Why you didn't tell the 4 messengers? They said you had something urgent to attend to." She thought he was avoiding her. Di Fui smiled awkwardly. Certainly, he could not tell them that the herbs were grown at a very dangerous place. Since the 4 messengers already knew he was going to immortalize, they would definitely stop him from collecting the herbs if they knew it. Since he had to pass down some of the tasks to the 4 messengers before he immortalizes, he should let them know his exact condition. Therefore, Di Fui told the 4 messengers the truth 4 months before the deadline of his immortalization. The 4 messengers were extremely shocked. The thing which Di Fui did not expect was that the 4 messengers began to have anxiety attacks since they learned the truth. On top of that, they kept so close to him all the time as if they were about to encounter their biggest enemy. Unsurprisingly, they would shed a tear in private once in a while. Sometimes, he would bump into them and scold them. Thus, they did pretend to be chatty and cheerful in front of him once in a while. Di Fui could not do anything about it. Since Di Fui did not want to worry them, he decided not to tell them his risky plan just to prevent them from being anxious again. Gu Shijio remained silent as she listened to his explanation. Certainly, she knew how the 4 messengers treated Di Fui. Perhaps, their love for him was as much as what she had for Di Fui. The only difference was the forms of their love. It was love between a man and a lady from Gu Shijio, while it was brotherly love from the four messengers. They could even sacrifice their lives for him. Hence, the truth was impossible for them to accept. Suddenly, Gu Shijio recalled seeing Mu Feng cry to the extent that his face was fully covered by his tears. In fact, she did feel it was like facing an apocalypse when she knew the truth. Even until now, she did not dare to imagine what she would do when the time comes. She sat there with her face down. Di Fui stuffed a bottle into her hand. "Here, drink it, don't waste my effort." At this moment, Gu Shijio did not plan to be courteous too. She took the bottle and drank the medicine. It was extremely bitter but fragrant when it slid down her throat. She finished in a few mouthfuls. Di Fui heaved a sigh of relief and retrieved a piece of candy out of nowhere. "Nah, to sweeten your tongue." He was still as caring as usual. Back then when she fell sick or got injured, he always gave her a candy right after she finished taking her medicines, and he was still keeping the habit. Gu Shijio leaned against his chest. She took the candy and popped it into her mouth as she felt a bittersweet taste in her heart. It was a maple candy, and that was her favorite candy. She liked it very much and felt contented. However, she felt that she was going to tear again in a moment. She seemed to be too emotional these days. It was as though she was getting her period soon. In order to hide her mood swings, she straightened her back. "Should I meditate after I take the medicine?" She did not want to waste the medicine he made. Di Fui smiled and made her sit in a meditative position. "You just need to meditate for an hour. Let me teach you the method." He taught her the method, and Gu Shijio made a mental note to ensure she would not forget it. Perhaps it was because of his companionship too that Gu Shijio managed to calm herself very quickly. An hour later, she opened her eyes and felt her body. She realized her blood circulation had been improved and her bones were lighter. Besides that, all her anxiety seemed to have disappeared. His medicine was amazing. She heaved a sigh and suddenly noticed Di Fui was lying beside her as she turned her head. His eyes were closed and he was breathing heavily. He fell asleep. Although Gu Shijio was a little disappointed, she was actually relieved. She still remembered that he did not really take any breaks when she was still in a form of a soul. The only goal he had was to focus on resurrecting her. Perhaps he did not sleep for 2 days when he was away to get this medicine for her. He must be exhausted. However, he never mentioned it. She felt sore and warm in her heart at the same time. She wanted to be next to him. Gu Shijio kept a slight distance away from Di Fui because she did not want to disrupt his sleep. She then looked around and realized the pavilion was installed with light pink drapes. It could block out any excessive light and also give them some privacy. He was such a thoughtful person. She glimpsed at him as she lied down beside him. She realized she could not look at him enough no matter how long she fixed her eyes on him. How good would it be if time could stop here at this very moment? Gu Shijio felt like tearing again upon reflecting on how much he had sacrificed for her. Thus, she quickly got up and took a deep breath. Di Fui did not have much time left. It was obvious that he would not want to see his closest companions sad during this time. It was then that Gu Shijio realized that extending his life was not the only mission she had. She must reduce his burdens as well. Gu Shijio wanted to take a stroll around the plum forest to figure things out. However, just as she was about to leave, an arm hooked around her waist and pulled her back. She immediately took a look and noticed that it was Di Fui. "Where are you going?" "Hey, you're awake. You should sleep more." Gu Shijio responded in a soft tone. Di Fui smiled and kissed her on her lips. "Would you complain that I neglected you?" Gu Shijio flushed. "No." Di Fui drew his handsome face nearer to her and blew his warm breath on her face. She blushed even more as she gently pushed him away. "Do you still feel tired? You should just sleep more." "No, I'm good." Di Fui exposed his signature grin. "I remembered someone wanted to rape me just now. Unfortunately, I was disappointed because she just ran away after removing half of my clothes." Gu Zijia's ears turned red as she recalled the incident. Strangely, even though they have been married for such a long time, and they were already considered as an old couple, she was still shy whenever he teased her. Decisively, she flipped over and pressed him down under her body. She was now on top of him. She smiled evilly, and her fingers began to remove his clothes. "My lord, are you sure you want me to dominate you?" Di Fui glimpsed at her as he narrowed his eyes. Surprisingly, he nodded. "Yes, please." He closed his eyes and opened his arms as though he was ready to submit himself. Gu Zijia's heart was racing, and her eyes were vigorously analyzing the situation. He must have thought that she did not have the guts to rape him. She must give him a surprise this time. Her attractiveness grew when she became more dominant. Without hesitation, Gu Shijio removed his clothes. His flawless body was revealed, which was familiar to Gu Shijio. Her fingers were gently wandering around his skin and then slowly moved toward his important regions. Do not get her wrong, she was not lingering at his pubic regions but health-related body parts. Since he had to collect the herbs from a dangerous venue, he might have gotten injured. However, he did not mention anything to her, hence, she decided to check. Even though she was not fiddling with his private part, it was extremely seductive to Di Fui, who had not had sex for a long time. He was so turned on. Di Fui always had great expectations. Since they were married in a prohibited area, he had never wasted any night he had. Since they fell apart, he had deliberately distanced himself from Gu Shijio. However, his desire for her had never stopped. It had only been suppressed by him. He loved her as much as he loved himself. Every single detail about her needed to be perfect. Di Fui closed his eyes slightly while feeling her fingers gently glide all over his body. However, something was awry. He felt as if he was being tickled. Could she have not known which body part was the most sensitive? He thought that was bad. While feeling rather uncomfortable, he opened his eyes and looked at her. He then realized that she looked serious, and her expression was almost similar to that of a doctor's. Di Fui could not believe it. "What are you up to?" His voice was utterly hoarse. Gu Zijia's lips twitched. "Checking if you are injured." Luckily, she did not find any exposed wounds on his body. Through checking his pulse, she knew that he did not suffer from any internal injuries. Except for the fact that he was rather lethargic, there was nothing serious. She looked at him sternly. "You were not thinking that I would do something to you right here, were you?" Di Fui was caught by surprise. Gu Shijio squinched her eyes. "This is an outdoor gazebo. People will occasionally pass by. I will not want others to see when I devour our lord." Although he had surrounded the gazebo with a veil, the veil was translucent, and if there were passers-by, how could they explain it to them? Di Fui sealed his lips tightly and then broke out in laughter. "Baby, in my dictionary, backing out is not allowed." His eyes were as deep as the ocean. With a grasp, he held onto her small hand, which she was about to bring back to herself. Then, he brought her hand towards the vulnerable part of his body, and muttered, "If you would like to devour, please finish the job." Gu Zijia's hand was forced to touch it. It was scorching hot like melted steel. Gu Shijio also felt that her cheeks were burning. Finally, she understood that once Di Fui stopped suppressing his feelings, he would behave almost animalistic. Still such a narcissist, her heartbeat was out of control. Yes, she wanted him too, but at that place, she felt insecure. She grew anxious and suddenly hugged him. "Let's change location." They teleported right away. In the following moment, they appeared in the bedroom of the Celestial Master's palace. She had mastered her teleportation. Within the radius of hundreds of meters, she could teleport as she wished, without error of more than 1 meter. She was extremely good at it. However, she was very nervous that day, and instead of teleporting onto their bed, she made they almost crashed onto the wall as she was carrying Di Fui. She hurriedly took a few steps backwards. Not being wary enough, she bumped into the table. The table shook as well as the cup on it. Then, the sound of glassware shattering could be heard. Outside her bedroom stood the guards, which immediately called the maidservant over. "Who is in there?" The sound of the footsteps grew more audible. Someone was about to enter and have a look. The maidservants knew when she went out. Little did they know she would immediately teleport back. Gu Shijio looked at the person in her embrace who was half naked. That person was not at all nervous but only looked at her with a smile. She cursed under her breath and said in a hurry, "It's me. You can go. Go away from the compound. Without my order, do not enter." Although she had tried really hard to calm her voice, it was rather coarse. Upon hearing such a weird order from her, the maid servants were confused, but they still did as told. They answered her order and left. 786 Gu Shijio put Di Fui on the bed, and Di Fui allowed her to do anything with him. He had a pair of eyes that were almost smiling today. Gu Zijia's cheeks were still very red and hot. She turned to lie down by his side, then squeezed his cheeks using her hands. "Why are you looking at me like that?" They were, in fact, the Lord's cheeks. She should cherish the fact that she was allowed to squeeze them. His skin was very elastic. She squeezed once and was unsatisfied. Hence, she squeezed again and again. Di Fui moved his gaze slightly, grabbed one of her hands, and pulled her onto himself. Gu Shijio was then in his embrace. She was on top, and he was below. Their bodies were against each other's, and their gazes met. Di Fui held her hand that was squeezing his cheeks and gave off a burst of soft laughter. "Nervous?" Gu Zijia's heart leaped, but still, she was stubborn. "Who is nervous?" Di Fui kissed her fingertips, and then kissed every single one of her fingers and said, "Then you are not good at flirting. Since when was flirting squeezing cheeks?" On her fingertips was a tingling sensation. He was lying there with his shirts open and genitals almost visible. His smiling pair of eyes appeared to have ripples in them, which brought along a sense of captivation that would make others fall for him. He looked as tame as a white rabbit, but she was able to perceive the danger he brought with him. That guy was, in fact, unable to hide his dominance as a man. Gu Shijio actually wanted to tease him, but ultimately was teased by him. She was on him, and his finger had already started moving its way up her body. Although she had her body changed, the sensitive points on her body did not change at all. He was well aware of that, hence, he could easily tease her until her face burned and her breathing quickened. She could not be so passive. She could not let him reign over her. Gu Shijio always wanted to be the strong one. Hence, she pulled her hand back and pulled his hand out from underneath her shirt. "Do not touch." Di Fui's breath hastened, but he gave a peal of soft laughter, and immediately moved both his hands onto the top of his head. I won't touch." Gu Shijio braved herself, ignored the pair of eyes that tended to quicken her heartbeat, and took off his shirt. He was obliging, raising his hand when being told to, moving his leg when being told to. He could not be any tamer. Very quickly, Gu Shijio had almost stripped him. The shirt on her, although it was in a mess, was still covering her body. His genitals were already out in the open, whereas hers were still not so visible. Their position bolstered Gu Shijio, and to top it up with his obedient-looking face, she was barely in control of her own heartbeat. She moved her little hands about his body like feathers. Di Fui, who had been watching her with composure throughout, was still lying there in obedience. However, flames started emerging in his pair of burning eyes, and his breathing hastened. Half a year of conflict, half a year of being apart, and the fact that he had been suppressing his emotions made that moment a time of relief. His manly instinct urged him to do it immediately. Still, she appeared to be beating around the bushes, doing things to his body, but not right to the gist. He initially wanted to wait for her to finish the complete set. Little did he know that the foreplay would take so long. Finally, he could not resist it any longer. He raised his arms and hugged her, then turned over to push her downwards. He held her head up as he kissed her, and said with a hoarse voice by her lips, "Shijio, this is the first time for your body. I think it will be better for me to do it." Gu Shijio was still unrelenting. "I want to be on top. All right, my wife, you can be on top." Di Fui was acquiescent. Since they had been together before for 8 years, Di Fui was more than experienced in this matter. The shadow of their bodies got tangled as the bed undulated to their movements. She was in fact above all the while, but the orchestrator was him. The moment their hearts and minds came together, tears emerged from the corner of Gu Zijia's eyes. He halted and held her waist. Are you in pain? Gu Shijio was kissing him almost erratically. Nope. Happy, hurting her body was definite, but he was already experienced, so this would be much better compared to his first time. Also, it was good that Gu Shijio was pretty resilient towards pain. Such a pain would not matter. She cried because she gave her all in kissing him, gave her all in latching onto him, as if such latching would allow time to stop and keep him here forever. He was always the root cause of any pain in her heart. She did not want the idea of separating to affect this beautiful moment. Hence, she kept the smile on her face. She could do it for him, just like how he did for her. Within a night, Di Fui was able to make her climax a total of 7 times. Di Fui was obviously an intermediate or even expert in the area. As they went up and down, he had managed to put tears to her eyes, making her moan uncontrollably. Gu Shijio just let herself go with the flow. Although that was not their honeymoon night, they wanted each other to have the best of themselves. The light of the sunset cascaded through the window. Di Fui had fallen asleep. Since Gu Shijio died, he had not been able to sleep properly and had been busy with all kinds of things. Now that the person that he loved the most was in his embrace, he was finally able to get a hearty rest. Gu Shijio was also tired, but she did not fall asleep. She was reluctant to fall asleep. She laid on him obediently. From his body, she could smell a plain and cold scent, which could calm her thoughts. She used his collarbone as her pillow, letting her head lie on his shoulder while her arms were wrapped around his waist. She just kept looking at him as he slept. She was reluctant to be apart from him. She did not know how others would behave in a relationship, but she was going crazy at this stage. Gu Shijio felt that Di Fui and her were destined to be together. There was no other way to live. She really fell deeply in love with him. She would do anything for him. If their feelings for each other was real, why would the present matter so much to them? There was a popular saying, what was important was that they once meant so much to each other, not that their relationship was going to last forever. She lifted her hand to look at her finger. As they were under extreme heat just now, he slipped a ring on her finger. It was the ring that she once had, and now it was finally back on her finger. He said he would marry her as the Lord. He would like to make everyone in the land know that she was his wife. He was preparing for their wedding, one that was so big for her that she would feel proud of marrying him. Getting such a promise from him made her happy. She never thought he would be proactive enough to say it. She even thought that he would make excuses saying that there was not enough time for the preparation or saying that he would not like to occupy her for too long. Gu Shijio had already made up her mind that if Di Fui would marry her, she would regard him as her only husband throughout her lifetime and would not fall in love with any other man until her last day. She possessed a small heart that was only able to accommodate one person as her lover. When Di Fui woke up, he realized that she was still in her initial sleeping position, curling like a kitten in his embrace. He was staring at her in silence. His pair of dark eyes were as dark as the night sky. Their gazes met, and Di Fui lowered his head to kiss her on her lips. Not asleep. Gu Shijio buried her head in his embrace and mumbled, "I just woke up." She had been reluctant to fall asleep. He had left too little time for her. She could not bear to waste even 1 second. She did not want time to fly by wastefully in her sleep. However, Di Fui was a smart man. He knew her well and his heart ached. He kissed the side of her cheeks and said, "Shall we rest a little longer? I will hug you while you sleep." Gu Shijio shook her head and buried her little face in his chest. She mumbled, "Fui, do you think that we will have kids?" Di Fui placed his palm on her little stomach and rubbed gently. "Let us wait for it to happen by itself." "All right." She nodded, desperate for a child. She then chuckled. "I want to conceive a child to latch onto you. With a child, you will be reluctant to leave us." Di Fui rubbed her forehead in response. "Stupid. You are the person I am most reluctant to leave. It does not matter whether or not we have kids." In his heart, she came first. Her position was unable to be substituted by anyone. He would never put her in the same position as he did before. Di Fui brought his face closer to Gu Zijius and asked, Unable to fall asleep? She nodded. Di Fui's body trembled a little. Then let us get up. I want to teach you the knowledge of stargazing. Gu Zijia's body froze for a while, and she squeezed herself into his embrace. I'm tired now. Then she closed her eyes. Di Fui was speechless, but he understood her intentions. She must be thinking that as long as she did not learn up all the skills of the Lord, God will increase his lifespan, at least by a little. How could it be so easy? How could God's plan be so easily interfered with? The remnants of his days had been fixed, and no matter whether she was able to learn up everything, he would not be able to stay. If she were not able to pick up those skills, she would only suffer in the rest of her days. He could not resist the urge and pulled her tightly into his embrace. I will carry you there. Gu Shijio became restless and pushed him away. I am tired as hell. I want to sleep. Di Fui kept silent. He stared at her eyes and noticed her faint dark circles. Perhaps she really was tired. His heart softened, and he pulled her back into his embrace again and patted her gently. All right, you sleep. I will hug you to sleep. Will you sing a song? Gu Shijio requested. Di Fui was stunned for a moment. I cannot sing as well as you. He was excellent with instruments, but his vocals were rather average. Di Fui tended to hide his weaknesses, hence, he never sang to her before. I want to hear you sing. It could be a lullaby. Gu Shijio was determined. Di Fui did not want to disappoint her, hence, he looked for a song he was rather good at and sang it softly by her ear. He was singing a song once sung by Gu Shijio. I would like to ask the world how long does it take for a serendipitous encounter on a night with the water and the moon as clear as a mirror, meeting below a putti tree, fate comes to our fingertips, disturbed by our age, blowing the dust and manipulating our feelings, however unable to survive through time, no matter how much I hope for it, still, the best thing to do is to bid my wishes. With a grin, I looked at your face. How far apart are the sky and the earth, and before your eyes, how could I forget? That song was Lu Zijin's Putti Respite. His voice was magnetic and he sang quite well. As his voice emanated by her ears, it brought along with it a taste of love. Gu Shijio was listening in his embrace. It was, in fact, a rather unemotional song, but she felt her heart ached after listening to it. Nonetheless, she still wanted to listen to Di Fui sing. Di Fui sang while rubbing her sleeping veins softly, hoping for her to have a good sleep. Before long, she fell asleep to the sound of his voice. The well-known celestial master Zhuo was the greatest god of the world. He was the Lord. As the news went around, the world exploded. Many found it unbelievable, but since it was the Lord himself who announced it before the crowd, everyone there was astounded. However, that was not the most breaking news. The Lord also announced another piece of news on that day. As the news spread out, the whole land experienced an upheaval. The Lord was going to marry the national celestial master. According to how it was being told, when the Lord made the announcement, the entire crowd remained in complete silence. Some were almost solidifying into sculptures before they broke out into cries of celebration. Gu Shitian was the most pitiful man on earth that day. It was only when Di Fui announced that he was aware of the news. He was initially handling the order on stage, and when the Lord's words came out, his legs limped, and he fell from above the stage, almost like a falling wild goose. Luckily, Mu Feng's eyesight was good, and his reactions were swift. With a long chain, he pulled him back, and placed him safely back to his original position. He patted his shoulder. General Gu, be careful. Gu Ziyishan's expression was as if he just got stricken by lightning. His mind was occupied with the fact that he was going to be the father-in-law of the Lord. I was not dreaming, was I? He was puzzled for some time, and such a thought only hit him later. Why did his daughter not mention it beforehand? It would at least give him some time to sort out his thoughts. He was so agitated that he almost had a heart attack. What he did not know was that the Gu Shijio in front of him was not the Gu Shijio he had before. She came from a different world. She had no blood connection with him whatsoever. When Di Fui was making the announcement, all of the Heaven's Gift disciples were there. Everyone had a different response. Qian Yueran and Tian Jiue had a that was why expression on their face, while Long Sai had already figured that out earlier, only not pointing it out before Di Fui admitted it himself. He had mixed feelings. There was definitely despair. He had also expected that, no matter whether Gu Shijio got married to Di Fui, he never had a place in Gu Zijia's heart. She would only regard him as a friend throughout her lifetime, and he had to accept it. To Huawian, it was not a complete shock to her, but in her heart contained jealousy and dissatisfaction. Still, she could not do anything. Lan Jingyi was also there under the companionship of her brother. The news made her face pale, but she did not dare to show any expression of dissatisfaction. Of course, the rest of the people with whom they were familiar and unfamiliar were elated. Gu Kanmo never thought that the Lord was, in fact, Celestial Master Zhua. He was so agitated that he smacked his own head. However, amid the revelating news, he volunteered himself to be the witness of the marriage. He wanted to manage such a grand ceremony. It would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him. Their wedding day was set on the 3rd day of March, a day when flowers generally blossomed. The wedding of the Lord would definitely have the most grandiose preparation. Many would personally attend the wedding, even the kings of all 3 kingdoms would be present. The king of Feishan Kingdom was Rong Jialuo's youngest brother. When Rong Jialuo was still alive, he had cared a lot for him. Hence, he excelled both intellectually and physically. The only thing was that he was still rather young, and his excellence had been shadowed by that of his brother. Had it not been for the series of events that had taken place, the throne would not be of his possession. He was brought up by Di Fui himself. He was 20 years old that year. Since succeeding the throne, he had done a few things for the people, hence, was referred to as a good king. In the matter of the wedding of the Lord, he had been helpful. He had been involved in it personally, and had been using all the best resources available to him for the big day. Even Gu Ziyixian's effort became faint before his. All of it made it redundant for Gu Shijio to be worried about the undeniably lavish celebration. Honestly speaking, Gu Shijio did not even think of being worried about the matter. At the moment, her mind was occupied with thoughts of ways to extend Di Fui's lifespan. She was also really busy learning up the Lord's skills and tending to her relationship with Di Fui. She had initially rejected learning up the Lord's skills, but she was told by Firmament Stone that God's plan could not be disobeyed. No matter whether she learned or not, things would go as they were meant to be, and her threatening tactic would be of no use. It was only then that she knew that Firmament Stone had connections with God's plan. She immediately pushed him to tell her about things to do with God's plan, but Firmament Stone kept his silence, saying that he had only been receiving signals pertaining to God's plan through his instincts. In fact, he was also rather confused about how he received the info. Gu Shijio was, in fact, curious if she could try her luck with convincing the Almighty God to give Di Fui a longer life, but she was not able to find the way to find this deity. Within the period, she had gone to look for Long Moyen with the muscle, thinking of figuring something out through him. Long Moyen, of course, did not want to say anything, but beside Gu Shijio was with the muscle. Hence, Long Moyen's secrets could not be kept. Sadly, even Long Moyen did not know how to go to the heavens. Through his memory, he knew that he was related to a king in the upper bound. He was brought up as Prince Long. In fact, Long Moyen probably did not know everything about his own life at this moment. Whatever the case, nothing much would come from him at this point. Gu Shijio could not resist and asked Di Fui if he had asked Fairy Queenly about it before and if Fairy Queenly had told him any secrets related to the upper bound. Di Fui sighed. He had asked her about it before, and he had his way to make Fairy Queenly tell the truth, but Fairy Queenly was, after all, one who had fallen from the above. In other words, she had been banished. Before her eyes was darkness, and then she lost her consciousness. When she woke up again, she then realized that she had been brought to the land. It could also be said that she had no idea where she was. In fact, Di Fui was more unrelenting than Gu Shijio. He had naturally thought of the road to the above. Throughout those years, he had found a few other individuals similar to Long Moyen and had interrogated them about it in the dark, but they were all in circumstances not different from Long Moyen's. There must be some other way. I believe Long Moyen and the rest of them are not the only ones who came from heaven. There must be more. I'm sure they know things. Gu Shijio clenched her fist confidently. Di Fui pulled her close at the waist and nodded. I will keep on looking. He chose to make her look at the bright side instead of crushing her hope. It had been 8 days since her return to his side. For the last couple of days, she had been spending all of her time with him. She did not even have enough sleep. Whenever he opened his eyes, he would definitely see a pair of big, bright eyes staring back at him cautiously, as she was afraid that he would suddenly pass away. For a few days, she did not sleep well at all. Certainly, she was aware of that too. She would pretend to be asleep just before he opened his eyes. Di Fui could obviously tell the difference between sleeping and pretending to be asleep. Her breathing, heart rate, and pulse were all different when she was awake. She was lying so closely in his arms, so he could definitely feel the difference. She could not hide the truth from him. He knew it very well that she was scared to lose him. Like a man who had been sentenced to death, everyone else would surely be worried as he slowly approached the end of his life. She was reluctant to let him go. Her insecurities started to creep in. However, Di Fui knew her well. He was well aware that she was trying very hard to help him stay. She was also worried about him. She did not want to become another weight on his mind, so she continued to laugh and joke with him like she was fine. She was still a quick learner like her usual self whenever new opportunities arose. But when she was not with him, she would fall into a constant state of anxiety, just like the 4 messengers. With each passing day, she grew thinner. Though, she cherished every moment when they were together and desperately wished time could just stop for them. Di Fui knew how bad she felt, but there was nothing he could do about it. He had to give her some hope, something for her to look forward to, so she would not break down while the time ticked by. His heart ached for her. He felt the pain. It was as if his heart had just been punched. He could only hug her tightly in his arms. He paid attention to Gu's Zygius dark circles which had nowhere to hide. He planted a gentle kiss on her nose and said, "Tomorrow is our wedding day. You should rest. I am hoping for a very beautiful bride." While he talked, he also pressed onto her acupuncture point that could help her fall asleep. He even sang some lullabies. As usual, Gu Shijio hugged him and rubbed her cheek against his skin, like a clingy kitten in pursuit of his attention. "Fui, I have lost interest in the wedding. I want to visit Yunqing province tomorrow." Mengxia once told me about a strange man who would run around frantically in the winter with only his underwear. He claimed to have met people from heaven. Di Fui was speechless. He knocked her forehead gently and answered, "The man is mad, silly. I have been looking forward to our wedding for so long. Don't you dare run away." Gu Shijio rubbed her forehead and protested. People laugh at him for his madness, but maybe that is because they do not see the world the way he does. Some men like to be mysterious. Maybe he is telling the truth. She would hold on to every chance that she found, regardless of how slight it seemed. She had to try, even when she knew it was hopeless. Di Fui kissed her again. "You seem energetic." He then proceeded to thoroughly make love to her. They had a very crazy time and tried everything that they could do. Finally, she gave up on the idea of skipping the wedding to visit the madman. Slowly, she fell deeply asleep in his arms. Like all traditions, a couple should not be living together before they were officially married, but Gu Shijio insisted on breaking the conventions and moved into the residence of Celestial Master Zhua. Chapter 1792. The wedding. Gu Shetian was mildly against the idea, but Gu Shijio had already made up her mind. There was nothing he could do to change it. They made an agreement that she would have to come home early on the wedding day as she needed time to wear the phoenix coronet and her wedding robes. It was the 3rd day of March, a very beautiful day indeed. It was a suitable day for a wedding. It was the most anticipated day for all the people of the Starry Crescent land. They had been eagerly waiting for the big day. The 10-mile-long street was very well decorated with red festoons to celebrate the day. By the street, people stood to wait. All of them dressed fully in red, as though it was time for another new year. Qian Lingyu, Yan Chen, Lan Weihu, Bailey Su, Gu Kanmo, and their friends from the Forbidden Land were all present as the guests from the bride's side. All of the aforementioned people were of noble status. They were not the type of people that were normally approachable by Gu Shiyan. They even offered their helping hands for the wedding. To Gu Shiyan, their presence came as both a surprise and astonishment. He was still very glad to have them. He understood that they were here only for his daughter. He believed that his daughter's wedding would be the most magnificent, one that was incomparable for any other woman on earth. The sound of a flute came floating in the air. The melody of the flute was very pleasant and lively. It fitted well into the sounds of the wedding gong and drum, lifting the spirits of every listener as the band played on. As the music slowly began, the house steward came and happily announced their arrival. "They are here." Gu Shijio was already well dressed in the room. Her makeup was done by the best wedding chaperone from the palace. Her dress was from Di Fui, so it was surely exquisite. The dress perfectly complemented her beauty, as ethereal as the rosy clouds that suffused the evening skies. She was beautiful and even more charming with the dress. All her servants could not keep their eyes from her as they continued to admire her beauty in awe. Lan Wei, who was obviously astonished as well. She looked at Gu Shijio with eyes full of admiration. She clearly respected and adored Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio sat waiting anxiously for Di Fui's arrival. She could only feel at ease when she finally saw his face. She was as anxious as a baby who refused to leave her mother's side even for a second. Like any other girls, Gu Shijio looked forward to having a wedding of the century for her own. Her biggest wish was to have a grand wedding, one that was witnessed by all when she finally married him. She would become his wife and share his journey, for better or for worse. Her wish was finally coming true. She would be the happiest bride if not for the fact that Di Fui was about to pass away. She shook her head to dismiss the thought. She did not wish to be reminded by these bad thoughts on her wedding day. There was still time. In 2.5 months, she was sure that she would eventually find a way. She would not stop until she reached her goal. Especially when it was about Di Fui, it was impossible for her to give up, not until the very end. She could hear the music slowly getting louder. Her place was very crowded, bustling with noise and excitement. However, the sound of the flute could clearly suppress all noises and was heard all around as it kept pouring in. It was him. He had finally arrived. He played the wedding song personally, which was a first. Di Fui never played by the rules. This time was no exception. Excitement filled her heart. She could not wait to see him. The people outside were all cheering madly as Di Fui's escort came flying in the sky, instead of traveling on foot. The lead escort was a very well-known band, which was formed together by the most excellent artists. Chapter 1793. The wedding, too, they were of such high status that not even royalty could invite them to perform. Yet, all of them were somehow present here together, as the band for a wedding ceremony. They were all riding on flying lions that were covered fully in white. These flying lions were obviously trained to fly in unison. Their bodies were decorated with red elements as well, parading off their strong and powerful bodies. It was a very eye-catching scene. Behind the band was a group of teenagers. Ravished by their beauty, all of them appeared to have the same features of dashing eyebrows and charming eyes. Their kung fu was obviously outstanding too. Instead of riding the majestic cranes, all of them were standing on them. As the majestic cranes slowly glided through the sky, their robes fluttered elegantly in the air, catching the attention of all the onlookers on the ground. In the middle, there was a red carriage that was carried by a unicorn. The people were unsure of the material of the carriage, as it continued to shimmer brightly with 7 colored rays under the sun. The shape of the carriage highly resembled that of a fiery red peony that blossomed in the sky, thus creating a very visually impactful sight. The entire entry was immensely elegant and dazzling, taking everyone's breaths away. Di Fui did not remain in the carriage. Instead, he was riding the snow-white unicorn that was galloping through the air. Every inch of its skin was covered in long white fur. Its body was perfectly built with strong and toned muscles. The unicorn was the most famous majestic being on Earth. Most people had only heard about its existence but had never seen it. It was only now that they finally had the chance to witness its glory. It was completely beautiful and breathtaking. The flying lions were beautiful, but nothing compares to the unicorn. Their presence only served as a foil. The unicorn stood with its head held high, knowing that it was the best majestic being that had ever existed. Its character completely distinguished it from the common crowd. It was indeed very attractive. However, its attractiveness was still incomparable to its masters. Like the flying lions, it was merely a foil as compared to the charm of its master. Di Fui was dressed unusually red. He decided not to wear his mask today, thus revealing his true face. The red robes fitted him perfectly. Unlike the usual groom's robes, his robes were elegantly made with great radiance. In the air, the robes raged in the whirling winds. His facial features were beyond elegant. There were literally no words to describe his attractive appearance. Not even the best drawing could perfectly capture his beauty. He played the flute while his dark black hair gently fluttered in the wind, along with his red robes. His breathtaking presence had brought great amazement to the people. The ladies were obviously stunned. Even the men were greatly impressed by what they had just witnessed as well. The Lord's beauty and charm were beyond what they had imagined. It was no wonder that he chose to wear his mask at all times. His appearance was enough to attract great crowds even without revealing his true capability. The people were filled with waves of admiration. They adored the Lord and at the same time, admired Gu Shijio. All the ladies felt the same waves of emotion. Many of them admired Gu Shijio, for she was lucky enough to be married to the finest gentleman. As for the four messengers, each of them was taking their own rides and following closely by Di Fui's side to ensure a smooth journey. The whole escort team went forward with great strength and stopped directly above the residence of the National Celestial Master. They then landed one by one while maintaining their formation. The simultaneous performance won people's acclaim, producing gasps of excitement. Chapter 1794. The Wedding, 3. Di Fui landed the unicorn, lunged forward, and touched the ground gracefully. Many people kneeled before him. Gu Shitian was radiating with happiness when he welcomed the Lord. For the past 2 days, he had been haunted by some conflicting emotions. Anyone on earth would have to kneel and greet the Lord when he arrived. He was certainly no exception to the courtesy. However, the Lord was about to become his son-in-law. So, should he kneel as well? He tried to ask Luo Xinglan for her opinion, but she simply answered his confusion with another question. If our daughter is going to be married to the emperor, will you kneel before him when he comes? She cleared out the matter for him in a single sentence. Without a doubt, he had to kneel. Upon seeing the emperor, even the emperor's father-in-law had to prostrate himself 3 times as an act of respect. This time, it was the Lord that he was facing. Therefore, Gu Shitian immediately led the family and kneeled before the Lord when he arrived. Di Fui halted his steps. For the sake of Shijio, you need not kneel before me from today onward. Gu Shitian's eyes shone with delight. He answered instantly and led the family to rise. Then he quickly showed Di Fui the way into the residence. The 4 messengers followed in along with the band while they kept playing their music. He is here. He is here. He is here. Gu Shijio could hear the voices clearly in her room. The chaperones did not delay anything. They quickly helped Gu Shijio up and covered her with the red bridal veil that was complemented with fringes and delicate embroidery. According to the marriage laws in the Facian Kingdom, when the groom arrived to escort the bride to the wedding, the chaperones would have to lead the bride to the door and change her shoes. The bride would be presented to the groom in a long dress of red silk. The groom would hold one end, and the bride would hold the other end. The chaperones would then leave the room together towards the carriage. The chaperones had to act according to the laws. When they finally saw Di Fui, most of them stood to gaze at him for a few moments, but they did not forget what they were supposed to do. Immediately, they handed the red silk to Di Fui and greeted him, wishing him many years of happiness in the marriage. Di Fui took the red silk without hesitating. Instead of turning around, he took another huge step towards his bride. He possessed a tremendous aura that was indeed intimidating. The chaperones were frightened when he came closer, so much so that they almost fell to their knees. Di Fui flicked his sleeve and signaled the two chaperones to keep some distance away from Gu Shijio. They obliged immediately. Swiftly, Di Fui bent over and carried Gu Shijio in his arms. Looking at her red veil, he could not help but smile delightfully. "Shijio, I am carrying you." Gu Shijio fell into his embrace. His arms were as welcoming as usual. Her insecurities started to fade away. All kinds of emotions started to fill her heart, heartwarming, touching, and joyful. She knew that he was doing this for her. She told him once about the tradition in the modern days, where the groom would carry his bride in his arms from the room all the way to the car. Di Fui did not say anything when she talked about it, so she did not expect that he would still remember. He proved that he did with his actions. All the witnesses were utterly shocked. One of the chaperones wanted to remind him that it was inappropriate to do so, but she was too afraid to. All of them only stood looking at one another. Gu Shietian took the courage and said, "My lord, you should hold the red silk with her. What you are doing now is rather inappropriate." Di Fui answered nonchalantly, "I decide what is appropriate." Gu Shietian kept quiet. He dared not speak up anymore. What he did not realize was that the Lord's actions had completely changed the tradition since that day. All grooms would carry their brides out of the room instead of holding the red silk. Ijiu could not care less about what others thought. She raised her arms and tied them to his neck. "Yes," she answered while slowly leaning in against his chest. Di Fui walked slowly with her in his arms. Many people were astonished. When he was finally leaving the main gate, the couple immediately became the center of attention. The huge crowd was surprised to see Gu Shijio in the Lord's arms. The pair left a very strong visual impact to the crowd. It was unheard of for them to witness a petite, delicate bride lying in the arms of the Lord, who was exceptionally strong and handsome. All the ladies envied her. With his bride in his arms, Di Fui carefully marched towards their carriage. The wedding would become the hottest topic of discussion for many years to come. Many people called themselves lucky to have witnessed the wedding. It was indeed a special one. Lan Wei, who nestled her head on Yan Chen's shoulder. There was a sense of longing in her eyes. Yan Chen pulled her closer at the waist and whispered, "Weihu, maybe we will not be able to have a wedding as grand as this, but I will be sure to carry you all the way to our bridal carriage when the day comes." Lan Weihu was delighted by the response. "Yes." She agreed happily. The escort took 2 rounds around the capital city in the air. The gesture implied the meaning of making the best of both worlds, as they believed that all good things should come in pairs. Thus, everyone in the capital had the chance to witness the grand event. Everywhere the carriage had been to, there would be petals floating in the air as if it were raining petals. In the carriage, Di Fui did not let her go. He still carried her in his arms. Even with a red veil covering her face, they had never felt so close to one another. "Shijio, are you happy?" Di Fui returned a bright smile and kissed her on the forehead through the veil. "I'm too." He had been waiting for this moment since 9 years ago. He was prepared, but she ran away right before the wedding day. She now sat in his lap with their fingers intertwined. Both of their rings added to each other's splendor with a gleam. There they sat, lovely like an affectionate couple. Gu Shijio suddenly thought of what she did in the past. Sorry, she apologized for the last time she ran away from their wedding. Di Fui shook his head in disapproval. "It was all my fault. Shijio, I am finally married to you. I am so happy." She nestled her head in his shoulder again. "Me too. It feels so surreal to me, like a dream." It was indeed a very magical dream. Di Fui rubbed his fingers against her cheek and answered, "I will let you know what is real tonight." "Pervert." Di Fui smiled and whispered in her ear, "I am only a pervert to you." Gu Shijio was speechless. Reluctant to be inferior, she fought back and said, "It is because I allow you to." Di Fui could not hold back his amusement and laughed out loud. "It is better for me to accept your request courteously." His laughter was clear and resounding. The 4 messengers were equally delighted when they heard him laughing. The Lord would only laugh so heartily when he was with Miss Gu. No one knew how long had it been for him to laugh so joyfully. When Miss Gu was dead, the Lord behaved as emotionless as an ice statue. He would not talk much and was slowly wasting away. It was Miss Gu who restored the Lord to his cheerful self, the one who loved to laugh, to make fun of people and to tease people with his dark sense of humor. From time to time, the Lord would even poke fun at the 4 messengers. Miss Gu played a huge part in his change. All 4 of them were very grateful for Gu Shijio, for she was able to bring great joy to the Lord at the dusk of his life. The thought of the Lord's final days brought tears to Mu Feng's eyes. Everything felt like a dream to Gu Shijio, like a dream that was too good to be true. Everyone fixed their eyes on the arrival of the couple. They were surprised to see the Lord carrying his bride in his arms. All 3 emperors were present, including their officials of all ranks. Every other clan's leaders and their followers were present as well. The place was extensively decorated with bouquets and piles of brocades. There was a sea of faces swamped at the venue. These great leaders were all present at the same time, spread out in every corner and waiting patiently for the arrival of the couple. There was no way to tell who was the noblest among them all, for many overlords were there. The overlords were considered as people who had traveled far and wide enough to have a breadth of knowledge, but none of them had ever seen a groom carrying his bride out their bridal carriage before. The protocol officer would definitely emerge and censure them for behaving so inappropriately, but it was the wedding of the Lord and the national celestial master. No one dared to express their disapproval. None of them could find the guts to do so. Many of them were present with their wives. A multitude of feelings surged up when they saw the Lord carrying his bride in his arms. Certainly, they were married to their husbands in an open, correct manner with a huge wedding celebration. However, their weddings were incomparable to what the Lord had done for his bride today. To their surprise, they would never have expected to see a man, as superior as the Lord, carry his own bride to their wedding ceremony. The gesture was very lovely, like he was holding something so precious in his arms that he carefully cherished. The intimate interaction did not set the world on fire. Instead, they thought that it was rather lovely for the Lord to attend the wedding ceremony with his bride in his arms. They fixed their eyes upon the couple as they walked. Long Sai was amongst the people present. He was immediately filled with complicated feelings when he saw them. Once upon a time, he pictured how he would hold his wedding when he finally reunited with Gu Shijio. He knew how weddings were like in the modern days, so he knew exactly what Gu Shijio wanted. He had even considered if he should carry her in his arms on the day of their wedding, but he was worried that such an act would arouse criticism. He tended to overthink and was overly concerned with too many trivial things. The more he was concerned, the more losses he had to suffer. Some things were not meant to be. He turned and looked at Gu Shijio fixedly. She lay happily in Di Fuyi's embrace, with her arms tightly locked around his neck. He could not see her expression with the red veil covering her face, but he could tell that she trusted Di Fuyi wholeheartedly from their interaction. She would not easily put her trust in anyone. In fact, Di Fuyi might be the only one that she trusted. To his surprise, he also noticed that Gu Shijio did not feel awkward under the many judgmental eyes. Instead, she nestled her head so naturally against his shoulder, as though he was the only one that mattered even when the whole world was collapsing on them. Long Sai thought about what Gu Shijio had once told him before, that he should not put his trust in anyone. If anything were to happen to the one he cared about, he would definitely be emotionally devastated. There was only one person that he should trust, which was himself. It was once her principle. Had she given up her own belief? Di Fuyi had let her down so many times. Had she forgotten all of that? Long Sai could not help it. He had to remind Gu Shijio when he finally had the opportunity. Regardless of what Long Sai had in mind, Gu Shijio was indeed a very happy woman at that moment. It was their big day. Gu Shijio should forget about the bad things and focus on the good ones instead. All eyes were staring as he carried her in his arms and went through the doors. The roaring music played on, along with the release of some firecrackers. He finally let her down when they arrived at the center of the wedding hall. The hall was brilliantly decorated. Besides the exquisite decorations, there was a board that was engraved with the words heaven and earth. As a tradition, newlywed couples would usually hang the board that was engraved with the words the Lord to pay respect to him as the guardian of the entire land. Now that it was the Lord's wedding, they certainly could not hang his own title up. The only higher superiority over him would be heaven and earth. The chief witness of the wedding ceremony was Gu Kanmo. His face began to light up, glowing with immense happiness. Apparently, he must have been told to follow another set of procedures, as none of the things he did follows the customs of how a traditional wedding was supposed to be carried out. First, he faced Di Fui. "My lord, will you take Gu Shijio, the national celestial master, to be your lawful wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, to never let her go nor let her down, to carry out all services as told, to never go against any of her requests, and to honor her wishes truthfully?" It was not only Di Fui who was surprised by the bombardment of questions, but the guests in the hall were also all taken by great surprise as well. Some thought it was a gag. Long Sai was speechless. He looked at Gu Kanmo with eyes full of disapproval. Without a doubt, Gu Shijio must have revised the vows with him before the wedding. She had even used many terms from the modern days. Some were even quoted from the drama series. If the Lord agreed to the vows, it was safe to assume that he would become a henpecked husband who agreed to all of his wife's requests. For a man as superior as the Lord, people were curious if he was going to agree to all of the requests. Many curious eyes turned and looked at Di Fui. They wondered how he was going to solve the conflict. Di Fui hesitated for a moment and looked at Gu Shijio fixedly. Although he could not see her face under the veil, he could clearly picture that she was now staring back at him with her big, bright eyes, anticipating his answer. He smiled. "I will," he answered in all seriousness. There was a complete silence followed by his answer. Soon, the place started to bustle with noise and excitement again. Some were whistling and cheering. Certainly, some shook their heads at the answer. Gu Kanmo raised his hand to tell the crowd to keep their voices down. He had some questions for the bride as well. The crowd became quiet again. There was an expectant stir from the audience as they looked forward to his upcoming questions. Gu Kanmo looked at Gu Shijio with close interest. "Miss Gu, will you take Huang Tu, the Lord, for your lawful husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, to love and to honor him as long as he will live, to be his wife eternally, and that you will not fall in love or remarry any other man?" For a while, the audience remained speechless. They could not accept the Lord's discontinued existence in the world. Even when all humans in the world were extinct, the Lord would still be around. Gu Kanmo must have been a fool to ask such a silly question. Was it appropriate to present such a negative question on their big day? The audience looked at him rather inquisitively. Huawian, who had witnessed the entire ceremony, commented, "Headmaster Gu, what kind of question was that? The Lord will live eternally. Your offensive questions have just cursed the Lord with mortality." Gu Kanmo had to suffer the blame in silence. He only acted the way Gu Shijio wanted him to. Gu Shijio was the one who had instructed Gu Kanmo to act in that manner. She wanted to have the questions during the ceremony to profess her undivided love to Di Fui in front of everyone. Agreeing to all the conditions in the vow was equal to swearing an oath to heaven and earth. No one was allowed to go against his or her words once the oath was made. Gu Kanmo also realized that it was not exactly a propitious thing to say. However, the Lord was, after all, immortal. What he said would not do any harm to the Lord at all, so he did exactly what Gu Shijio told him to. Di Fui's expression changed when he heard the vows. He looked at Gu Shijio and communicated with her through directed audio. "Shijio." Once she agreed to the vows, the oath would be immediately established. After he was gone, she would have to live alone for tens of thousands of years until death came upon her. He would not allow her to commit herself into something so foolish. Di Fui was worried that she would answer to the vows. Quickly, he made a snap that aimed to seal her acupuncture point, so she would not be able to speak. What he did not know was that Gu Shijio now had another argument with an unknown voice in her head. It was the same voice that started disturbing her when she was still trapped in the clouds. It grumbled in an indistinct voice from time to time, so she could not quite tell the gender of the voice. Gu Shijio thought she would never come across the voice again, but it reappeared when Gu Kanmo started to read the vows. No way! You cannot agree to take the oath. He is not the destined one. The voice warned her. Gu Shijio sneered and answered in an icy tone. If not him, then who? Long Moyan? Long Moyan has violated the heavenly order. He deserved to be deposed and punished. The destiny between you and Huang Tu has come to an end. The ways of heaven have arranged another marriage for you. 200 years later, both of you will meet again and fall happily in love. If you promise Huang Tu to be his wife, you will be considered as violating the heavenly laws. You are burning bridges if you do that, the voice explained hastily. Why must heaven arrange a marriage on my behalf? Gu Shijio did not understand the intention behind every arrangement, nor did she bother even to find out. She found these arranged marriages irritating. You are the future lord. You will have a very long lifespan. Without a happy marriage, you will easily go to extremes in everything. Huang Tu is the lord, but he has also been single for so many years, hasn't he? He and I only met when his life is almost coming to an end. What kind of logic is this? In fact, heaven had also arranged a marriage for him, but he refused to obey and has always been in constant defiance of the heaven's will. He refused to fall in love with the woman, the voice answered helplessly. Gu Shijio suddenly realized something. About the woman that he was assigned with, was she Lan Jinka? The voice became a little weaker. It is true. He and Lan Jinka were supposed to be a couple. Unfortunately, he refused to obey to the arranged marriage and only befriended her. Gu Shijio heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like Di Fui had always been in defiance of heaven's will. No one could make him do anything that he refused to. I will only follow my heart. I like whom I like. No one can make any arrangement on my behalf. She answered with a condescending sneer. You must not be so stubborn. Huang Tu does not have long to live. It is merely a temporary fate that has brought both of you together. Consider yourself lucky that you still have a few months to spare with him. There is no need for you to spend your entire life alone for him. The voice was doing its best to convince her. Gu Shijio closed her eyes to ignore it. I am the master of my own fate. The conversation between them only lasted for a few seconds. Di Fui was surprised that she did not answer his first call, so he directed another audio message to get her attention. She was smart. She knew that Di Fui would definitely stop her from making the oath, so she made her defense quietly and bounced back the snap that Di Fui had just cast. Then, she looked up and answered Gu Kanmo with a firm voice. I will. I pledge myself to the oath. Di Fui was at a loss for words. The sky used to be clear and bright, but it all changed when she made the oath. Dark clouds started to roll in all of a sudden. The sky above Celestial Masters was resonance burst into red thundering flashes of lightning. The oath had just been established. Di Fui clasped her hand tightly as he called her out. Shijio. Gu Shijio held his hand tightly in return and directed another audio to him. I do not believe that you are going to die. You must live on for me. Di Fui took a deep breath and answered, I will fight on. The ceremony carried on. Everything seemed to be going so well. Both of them prayed and bowed to the heaven and earth. Before they proceeded to the bridal chamber, Di Fui carried her in his arms once again under the watchful eyes of the people and strode into the room. The audience was not surprised by their unconventional interactions anymore. They were not shocked to see Di Fui carrying his bride in his arms. Instead, the audience quickly sent the newlywed their blessings. The decoration of the bridal chamber was done according to Gu Zijia's preferences. The furniture was delicate and elegant. There were too many beautiful things to be fully appreciated all at once. Di Fui carried her into the bridal chamber. All the chaperones quickly approached them and greeted them promptly. Di Fui put her down gently on the bed and uncovered the red veil. She was stunning. Her eyes flickered a little in the light. It was an astonishing sight to witness her ethereal beauty. He could not take his eyes off her at all. The servants and the chaperones quickly congratulated Di Fui. They then proceeded to invite him to the hall to celebrate with the guests. It was customary. However, Di Fui was obviously a man who refused to be accustomed to any rules. He signaled the servants to back down and carried Gu Shijio to the side of the table. On the table, there was a set made of a delicate wine pot and glasses. The wine was prepared for the newlywed to drink cross-cupped from one another's glasses. Gu Shijio giggled in his embrace. "You really like to carry me around, don't you?" He held her tightly at all times, refusing to let her leave her side at all. "I wish to carry you for the rest of my life," Di Fui sighed. It was easy for a normal couple to promise eternal love and to grow old together. However, it was not easy for Di Fui and Gu Shijio at this stage. Gu Shijio hugged him around his neck and planted a kiss on his chin to cheer him up. You have made your promise, so you have to carry me for the rest of our lives. You are not allowed to leave me alone." Di Fui felt as if a knife was piercing through his heart. He hid his pain with a smile and filled the glasses with the wine. She took the glass of wine from him. With a glass in his hand, he announced, "Come, let us have a toast. I have been keeping the wine for a few centuries. Have a taste to see if you like it." The red wine was exquisite, therefore its name was justified, Bewitching Eyes. The taste of the wine was smooth and sweet, exuding a faint, charming scent. It was truly unforgettable. With their arms tightly wrapped around one another, they leaned their foreheads against each other and finished their glasses of wine. Gu Shijio liked wine. She fell immediately in love with this particular wine, so she focused her eyes on the wine pot and asked Di Fui for more. "Can I have another glass?" The taste was so good. Di Fui laughed out loud. "Silly. You can only drink cross-cupped wine once. You will get to drink the wine again in the future. I have buried a few hundred jugs in the ground. You can drink as much as you want." Gu Shijio held his hand tightly and answered, "We shall drink the wine together." Di Fui hesitated a little at first. "All right," he then responded. Gu Shijio patted his hand gently and said, "All right, now that we are done with the drinks, you should get out there and attend to our guests, so others will not get any time for gossip." Instead of doing so, Di Fui carried her again. "No, tonight is our wedding night. You are the only one that I want to attend to." They went towards the bed. Gu Shijio was very happy, but she teased him back. "You sound like a male servant from a brothel." If the comment were to be made by someone else, he or she would be immediately slapped. However, Di Fui was not bothered by Gu Zijia's comment at all. Instead, he teased her back, "Am I? Let me attend to your needs to satisfy you." Di Fui gently placed Gu Shijio on the bed and raised her hands to remove her clothes. Gu Shijio quickly grabbed his hand and coughed a little. "You are very tired today. You should take a rest first." These days, Di Fui would spend his days teaching Gu Zijiu the skills of the Lord, and at night, he would enter into bed war with her. She worried that his body would not be able to stand it, so she tried to reject several times, but the results were unchanged. There was hardly anything that Di Fui wanted to do which could not be done. Fortunately, when she reconciled with him, her menstrual cycle just passed. Otherwise, it was not possible for him to have sex with her every night. Gu Shijio calculated her menstrual cycle and felt that it was easy for her to conceive in these days. As they made love regularly, it should be easy for her to get pregnant. Di Fui looked at her and did not intend to give up. "Shijio, tonight is our wedding night." The first night of a wedding and graduation day was the two greatest things in life. Di Fuisir only interested in the wedding night though, so he definitely did not want to let go of the opportunity. His eyes shined like stars in the candlelight, and a fire was definitely burning inside. His body was very hot, and it also proved to Gu Shijio that he did not want to waste the night. Gu Shijio used to think that she was not one to fall for a man's looks. However, when she looked at this face, her heartbeat involuntarily quickened. Gu Shijio was soft-hearted. In fact, she liked to share intimate moments with him too. It was the best experience to be intimate with a loved one. She was just afraid that he was tired. She raised her hand and touched his cheek. You have been very tired these 2 days. I am just afraid that you are tired. Di Fui cleared his throat and kissed her. Stupid, if you don't let me do it, I will be even more tired. It was the tiredness of endurance. The curtain on the bed was put down, and 2 shadows were overlapping inside. Tonight, his energy was exceptionally long-lasting and also burning hot. They only went 1 round, but he gave her 3 times of best experiences and made her feel as if she was floating on a cloud. While she was enjoying the ecstasy, a thought came into her mind. These 2 days are my ovulation period, and he has been so diligent, I could get pregnant. However, if we diligently have sex, it is easy to have a girl. But she wanted a son. She was not someone who thought more highly of males than females. However, she did want a son who looked like Di Fui. She loved him very deeply, so naturally, she wanted a Di Fui Jr. After an hour, Di Fui finally stopped. Gu Shijio was exhausted and did not want to move at all. Hence, Di Fui helped her to clean up and asked her, "Let me bring you for a bath?" Gu Shijio blushed and put her arm around his neck. "No, I'm tired. Can you use cleaning spell instead?" She would never forget the incident where he took her to take a bath after they had sex the day before. At that time, she wanted to use the cleaning spell to clean up, but Di Fui said that it was a great experience to take a normal bath. She was convinced, so she followed him to take a shower. While they were taking a bath, he took the opportunity to have sex again. She was too tired until she almost fell asleep in the hot spring pool. Because of his bad behavior last time, Gu Shijio never wanted to be fooled again. Di Fui smiled but did not force her. He cleaned her by using cleaning spell and helped her to wear soft pajamas. Then, the 2 of them lied side by side on the bed. Gu Shijio slept on his arm and talked to him. "Fui, do you want a girl or a boy?" Di Fui was slightly stunned. Gu Shijio looked excited. "Perhaps we will have children in the future." "Do you want a boy or a girl?" Di Fui's eyes were dark. He used his finger to play with her silky hair that fell on her cheek. "I would like them both." She knew that he would say so. Gu Shijio bit her lips, and her eyes were full of expectation. "I would like to have a boy. It would be the best if he looks like you." Di Fui squinted and smiled at Gu Zhijia's response. "I can't be copied. I am the most attractive man in the world and no one can surpass me." Gu Shijio pushed him. "Hey, don't be so proud. If I have a son, I must let him surpass you." Di Fui responded, "It doesn't matter if he is more capable than me, but the position he carries in your heart can't exceed mine." Gu Shijio squinted back. "You are jealous of your own son. Anyway, it is too early to be jealous. There is nothing confirmed yet. Otherwise, let us have a daughter. Our daughter would be graceful and cute. People used to say that a daughter resembled the ex-girlfriend of the father. I believe you will pamper her very much." Di Fui was helpless. "I think you will be the one who is jealous that time." Gu Shijio shook her head. "No, the more you pamper our daughter, the more joy I have. By that time, the 3 of us would be inseparable. We will travel together and have activities together. Our daughter will be lovely." The more she spoke, the more she yearned for it. Her eyes shone brighter in excitement. Both of them talked on the bed for a while. Gu Shijio simply lied on his chest and looked at his face. Her attention fell on his hair. His hair was black and silky. It looked very smooth and shiny. She grabbed some hair and played with it before she asked, "By the way, why did your hair turn black again? Can it be adjusted? I never knew you had this ability. In fact, your white hair looks very attractive, and you look charming with it." She paused and continued, "No matter what, you are still the most handsome to me." She hugged his waist. "Fui, since I love you so much, can you please stay? I can't live without you." If a patient with a terminal illness knew that he was especially needed, he would naturally develop the courage to fight the disease. There would be a strong desire for survival, and a strong desire to survive was the key to defeating the disease. Gu Shijio actually did not want to put pressure on him. However, she wanted him to understand how much she needed him so that he would fight against fate. Perhaps he could create a miracle. Di Fui remained silent, but he felt as if there was a knife stabbing his heart. However, he smiled when he responded, "I will work hard for it." For the woman in his arms, he had to work hard. Some people said that women are a tomb for a hero. In fact, women can also be the motivation for a hero to fight forward. The woman in his arms was the only one he would want to retain in his life. She was his favorite person in the world and the only one that he could not give up. He kissed her forehead at that thought. "I am delighted that I can meet you in my life." She was the one who let him taste true love. She let him understand that the world was so beautiful and being alive was so amazing. Her arms were still wrapped around him as she responded, "Me too." Although he had hurt her a lot, she never regretted meeting him and falling in love with him. The girl who was always cold and steady became talkative in front of him. She even liked to be pampered by him and loved to hold him like a little girl. Di Fui had changed her. She was no longer the cold-hearted assassin that she was before. How could he let her be alone in this world now? How could he bear to leave her? Gu Shijio seemed to think of something just then. Since even the Lord has to die someday and pass everything to a successor, who was the Lord before you? There must have been someone, right? Was that person a man or woman? How did the transition happen? Gu Shijio had never heard anything about the previous lord. Di Fui was stunned and shook his head. "I don't have any memory of this." Gu Shijio was surprised. Di Fui frowned and thought about it. He said, "My memory started when I woke up in the wilderness. The people in this world were not like this. It was a mess. After that, I conquered the world by myself, and slowly got my own powers and became the Lord." Well, he had lived for nearly 10,000 years. Those were the primitive ages. If Gu Shijio stretched it a few generations further backward, it would still be the time of the apes. So, am I the second lord of this world? Gu Shijio frowned as she asked. She always felt that something was not right, but she could not identify it. Di Fui brushed her hair with his hand but did not speak. Gu Shijio was silent for a while too before she asked, "How do you contact the person in charge of the heavenly laws?" Di Fui sighed. "When I was reading the stars to foresee the future, occasionally, there was a voice in my mind to tell me what to do, but I never cared about it. If the voice talked too much, I would do the opposite, so the voice would seldom contact me." Gu Shijio remembered the voice that occasionally came into her mind. It seemed to be the messenger of the heavenly order, and whatever it ordered appeared to be one's fate. Upon pondering, Gu Shijio suddenly thought of something. "Do you think the heavenly laws are set by the upper bound to rule the lower bound?" Di Fui sighed when he heard the question. "It is said that people in the upper bound must also follow the heavenly laws." Gu Shijio clenched her fists. "The person who made the heavenly laws must be a jerk then. He does not care about individual preferences." Di Fui laughed but did not speak. In fact, the heavenly laws did have its merits. If there were no rules, there would not be a framework. Without proper regulations, the world would have been in chaos. Di Fui had also set a lot of rules for this world that needed to be obeyed. The kingdom would have a set of laws, and each family would have their own rules. It was the only way to develop the world in an orderly manner. Furthermore, if at any time the rules restricted development, it would slowly be modified and removed. At this moment, Gu Shijio was mainly concerned about the idea of Di Fui dying. She would slowly understand the reason behind it in the future. Gu Shijio seemed to think of something again, and she glared at him. "Oh yeah, what happened to Tianjiu's disciple? There is rumor saying that Celestial Masters was separated the couple." Di Fui was silent for a moment and sighed. "Shijio, this is what I am going to teach you soon. Heaven's Gift disciples are not allowed to get married, and every Heaven's Gift disciple must suffer hurt from a relationship before he or she can become a true Heaven's Gift disciple." Gu Shijio was rather surprised by that remark. But this is what comes with their natal charts. They become Heaven's Gift disciples that can enjoy the glory of being a sage, but they must also bear the responsibilities and obligations they have and the hardships. So you deliberately created hurtful situations for them? Gu Shijio looked at him with disbelief. Di Fui shook his head in disagreement. I don't need me to create it. In fact, I don't interfere at all. The incident between Tian Jiyue and his disciple was an accident. Gu Shijio looked at him in silence. Di Fui continued, he had an affair, and it was something he needed to experience. It was originally unrelated to me, but the woman worshipped the devil, and she pretended to be a young and innocent lady by his side. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.